So say you found a skeleton. How would you tell if it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, Dapper Dino here with, of course, Science Side Up, who currently looks a little funny because I don't know what's wrong with my OBS, so we're gonna cycle her on and off, and that's not helping. We're gonna do other things. There it is. Sorry about that, everybody. For some reason, OBS just doesn't like me today. That's okay. What else is new, right? Maddie, how are you?
I am doing so good. Sorry, I'm tweeting out that I'm live on your channel right now.
Nice, I like that.
I'm doing great. I'm happy to be here tonight. Rumor has it that we're gonna look at a different Matt tonight, and yeah. I'm excited. I'm excited for that.
Enough Matt Powell for now. We're gonna do some raw Matt Man. Matt Nailor was. Look, that's the name he puts on his books, so that's not doxing anyone because he advertises those on the website. He advertises as Raw Matt, so we're not doxing anyone here. It's a well-known fact, but yeah, that's why today's episode is titled Balance of Nailor, after the classic, and I think one of the all-time great episodes of Star Trek, The Balance of Terror, which also introduced the world of Star Trek to Mark Leonard as the Romulan commander in that episode.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Forgive my lack of Star Trek trivia.
Uh-oh.
Was that an original series episode?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so in that one, it's basically this big, long game of cat and mouse between the Romulan commander and the Enterprise. And
excellent.
It's quite good. Mark Leonard does an excellent job as the Romulan commander, and then later on he went on to become the guy who played Spock's father, Sarek. And also, interestingly enough, he was the Klingon captain on the bridge of the opening scene of Star Trek The Motion Picture, because Gene Roddenberry felt bad that he didn't have a part for Sarek in the script, so he offered Mark Leonard a cameo as the Klingon captain.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
My favorite Star Trek Romulan episode of all time is Deep Space Nine, and I forget the name of the episode. But it's the one where it's a Honey, We Shrunk the Shuttle Pod episode. So there's an away mission that's gone wrong, and they're on, a shuttle, and it's like O'Brien and Jax and Bashir, and they get miniaturized, but because they're miniaturized, they find a cloaked Romulan ship. And now that I say that out loud, I'm not sure how those two things were related, but I'm sure it was explained well in the episode.
Everything is explained well in Star Trek.
Yeah. Listen, I'm here for a Honey, I Shrunk the Shuttle Pod episode, right?
Absolutely. Which, by the way, Rick Moranis is getting back into acting. His kids are all grown up now, so that was his big reason for getting out, is he wanted to basically spend more time with his kids, but now that they're grown, he's like, yeah, I think I'll get back into acting.
Excellent. So, that's great news.
Yeah, but anyway, we can't spend the entire time talking about Rick Moranis and Star Trek, fun as though that would be, right? Because it would be a blast. Unfortunately, this is Matt with Maddie.
Okay.
And we're going to have to get into...
Yeah, that's probably a top hats off day. We should just nerd out about Star Trek. But
all right. So let's first go over the rules, because we have an associated drinking game, which we don't actually encourage that you play because it's a bit dangerous. And also, we don't accept any liability or responsibility or anything for anything that might befall you as a result of it, because this is a play at your own risk. This is a dangerous game. Cool. So no liability for injury to self, others, damage to property, your own or others, anything like that, right? Stay safe out there. But if you do want to follow along, we drink whenever, in this case, Raw Matt is going to say something that's just so stupid we have to, which is a dangerous game with Raw Matt, because
that's a dangerous game with most younger creationists.
True, but Raw Matt is a special boy when it comes to saying dumb things.
Okay.
We drink whenever he gets something right that he's not just directly quoting from someone. Okay. That's unusual. Whenever he tells a joke that doesn't land, we're going to take a drink. Tells a story that almost certainly didn't happen, take a drink. Ever decides to just randomly bring up, say, the National Socialist German Workers' Party or any associated figures. Let's see. Also, there are some options for other people besides Matt to trigger drinks. So, when Godzilla or Mothra show up on audio, which happens from time to time, then we will take a drink for that. Also, there are a couple ways for people to use super chats to get us a drink. Because, I mean, quite frankly, if you want to shove money at me so I'll drink alcohol, I'll do it. So the two options there are, if you are a channel member, any super chat that you send, if you attach one of the kaiju emojis, which are exclusive to the channel members, we'll take a drink. Alternately, if you send any super chat indicating that AIG are a bag of dicks, because they like to copyright claim all my videos featuring their stuff, we'll take a drink for that. And as an update there, after over 2 weeks of holding my video ransom, they have released the copyright claim on my most recent video, including their stuff. I think that pretty much covers it. We did have a special one for Matt Powell for Columbine, but I don't know that Raw Matt does that, so we'll have to see.
We'll
think of
see
some...
if we have to add new rules for Raw Matthew. Uncooked Matthew.
Uncooked Matt, yes. The Matthew who remains too tough and chewy to be eaten.
Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go. So this is some interview he gave. I don't remember who it's with. I don't really care. It's just Raw Matt. He's going to say some dumb stuff.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, Eternal Life fans. So,
maybe that's it. I think it's Eternal Life Fan is the name of the channel.
Okay.
Today, a very special guest here, Raw Matt, once again, and he's going to be debunking evolution, giving his best arguments. And first of all, let me explain why I think this is a good idea that we should try to debunk evolution.
Because you want to look like an idiot is the only thing I can think of.
It's the only thing that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because you want to be a science-denying, not fully functional human in modern society. That's what you want.
Basically. Now look, I think most people who deny evolution do it for sincerely held beliefs and aren't being dishonest. They're ill-informed. But Raw Matt says things that he, at the very least, he has to be deliberately keeping himself uninformed. That's the best interpretation I can say, is he's intentionally keeping himself dumb so that he believes these things. I actually think it's much more likely that he knows that he's wrong and just doesn't care to actually find out the truth about anything. But
yeah, that's like, I know plenty of people who they were told in church one time how old the earth is, and maybe in their real life they're like an accountant, and it
doesn't matter,
and it's never come up, right?
Yeah, okay, sure, you believe in the young earth, whatever,
sure, right? I don't think that's the best in general, because it can lead to other science stylism, but and other issues. But where I think you and I really have problems with people is if people are being professional young earth creationism, I guess apologists is the right word there. I have yet to find one where I can't conclude either you are the dumbest person on the planet or you know better and are intentionally lying to people. And that bothers me.
It bothers me too, and it's a persistent problem. And it's also connected to the fact that if you use truth in your username, you are almost certainly wrong about almost everything you say. Which is, it's a weird little phenomenon. Why are people who use that word so likely to be speaking nonsense? But yeah. Anyway.
It's because evolution, I think, can lead people into a very nihilistic attitude where they kind of feel like life is meaningless, and I want people to fear God. As you know, I talk a lot about fearing God on this channel. And
well, look, I'm not going to talk about fearing God on this channel, but here's what I will do. We're going to put a poll, and it's going to say, if you accept evolution, are you a nihilist?
Ooh.
Yes, no, and then there's going to be another option for I do not accept evolution. So there you go. Those are the three options. I'm adding that as a poll. So please, guys, feel free to vote. Maddie, I believe you accept evolution, and I'm pretty sure you're not a nihilist.
I'm not a nihilist.
Okay.
I'm generally pretty optimistic. And this is, I think I've said this in every single Matt with Maddie, but just a reminder that the majority of people of faith worldwide accept evolution and an old Earth and all of that. And the majority of scientists worldwide, right, are in fact actually are religious in one way or another. So we're already into the false dichotomy of this is like Christians versus atheists versus the rest of the world,
Right.
This is people without hope who just want to tear everything down versus people who fear God, right? Like he's establishing that false dichotomy right off the top, and that's not this isn't Raw Matt, right? It's the other guy. This is whoever channel he's on, right?
Yeah, this is I think it's Eternal Life Fan is the name of the channel.
Okay.
I only say that because he said Eternal Life Fans and it like sparked like a thing in my memory. I might be wrong about that.
Okay.
But okay.
And evolution, if people can have the idea that there's no God, right? Evolution points,
which evolution doesn't say.
To the idea
doesn't
that
say anything about that.
There's less. That's going to make people less fearful of God, right? So I want to make people more fearful of God. So if we can promote the idea that evolution is not true. Plus, I don't know if evolution is true or not. Now, I'm not a very good expert on this.
Okay, hold up. If you don't know if something isn't true, you should not be active in promoting disbelief in that thing. I'm going to take a drink because that is crazy town.
Yeah. I was actually like mildly happy that he like said, I don't know. Because to me, he's saying, I don't know, but my faith requires me to hold position X,
Yes, sorry. John B said in the chat, these men are nihilists. There's nothing to be afraid of. Which, in case you guys don't know, there's a whole great bit about nihilists in The Big Lebowski, which is a hilarious movie. And after you're done with this show, you should find a way to watch The Big Lebowski because it's great. I mean, it's got Jeff Bridges.
When you said Big Lebowski, all I could think of in my head was the line from Monsters, Inc. when the little girl says, Mike Wazowski.
Also a great movie, but very, very different.
Very different. Well, just in my head, it was going Big Lebowski, and I was like, wait, no, that's a different movie.
One of those is a cute, heartwarming tale for kids. Another one involves severing fingers and a naked woman throwing her paint-covered body at a canvas to paint. So those are
best
very
not to
different.
Get the two confused.
Yes. If you're trying to show your kids a movie, maybe don't start with The Big Lebowski and instead go for Monsters, Inc.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
Yes. Okay, that's why I brought Matt here. Matt's the expert. Now,
I'm just taking a drink.
I don't think I believe in evolution at this point, but what I think about this or what I believe doesn't even matter. It's irrelevant. Here we go. Matt, take it away. Tell us.
Okay, first, if it's irrelevant, I might actually do this. I might try to email this guy and say, hey, since it's irrelevant what you believe and you're not sure, would you like to have someone come on and explain evolutionary biology and why you should believe it? And if his answer is no, then I'm going to call hypocrisy on that.
A little bit.
That's why evolution sucks.
All right, let's hit it, guys.
Evolution
All right.
sucks.
Evolution means a lot of different things. So let's clear this up. A lot of people like to go immediately to the unprovable aspects of science, like, let's say, abiogenesis, right?
Not part of evolution.
So, abiogenesis is not part of evolution. Also, it's not unprovable, right? It has yet to be demonstrated and isn't a process we currently understand.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean we'll never understand it.
Right. Yep. So.
Because they know that they'll never be able to prove it. So they're.
Nope. No one knows that.
Nope. No one knows that.
That's not even
we
a
sure
thing
don't.
that's knowable, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, for instance, there's another example, like in math, right? There's this thing called the incompleteness theorem, and it demonstrates that any system of logic will have statements which are true, but which cannot be proven to be true. So there will always remain within that system conjectures that have no formal proof and yet are true. Which means even in math, the most rigorous thing we have, where we can actually prove things beyond any even logical possibility of their incorrectness, there will be things that we can't prove that will be true. Even more so in science, where we don't even have the option of proving things with that level of certainty that we have in math, there are always going to be things that we may not be able to prove, but we don't know what they are. There's no way externally to say, this is something that I can't ever be able to prove in science. It's logically incoherent to say that that's a thing you can say about science.
Right. Yeah, and even thinking about like math, you know, there are problems that have stumped people for like mathematicians have been working on for 300 years, right? There's actually one that was recently solved, you know, which
Fermat's last theorem.
Yeah.
That's the theorem Captain Picard was working on.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, of course, when that episode was filmed, it hadn't been solved, but, you know.
Right. And even there's a handful of math problems that are called millennium problems that are like, we think that these are the things that will be solved in the next 1,000 years,
right.
You know?
Maybe when the quantum computers come online.
Yeah, exactly. So, so this idea that something is unprovable or unknowable, like that's not, no. Like, I'd be very, very careful with that wording, and I can't think of a situation where I could honestly apply it. You know, no, I could say something that like science is incapable of determining whether or not a god or gods exist, right? Because not that like it is unknowable or you know what I mean, but like that's a supernatural thing, and science doesn't deal in the supernatural, so it's incapable of answering that question. Which is different, right? That's different than this is a scientific thing that we just don't know how it works yet.
By the way, Tapioca Weasel says that Fermat's last theorem was solved in 94. Is that still recent? I mean, compared to when it was first put down in Fermat's notes, yes.
I'll find the article if I can. I follow a lot of math news.
Okay. You may very well have been thinking of something else, but I consider that to be recent, especially when you compare it, like I said, to how long ago the idea that basically Fermat had a conjecture because he didn't actually prove it in his notes, so it's just a conjecture. Given that that was proposed centuries ago, I do think that the 90s counts as recent when you compare it to that. It's sort of like different fields have different time frames that count as recent. So for me, you know, like 30 million years ago when I'm talking about paleontology, that's recent. For Maddie doing meteorology, I mean, that's ridiculously remote. Who cares about what was happening 30 million years ago when you're trying to figure out where the tornado's going to hit?
Right. We need to know where the tornado's going to hit. It's very different. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Caleb Sherstead says for $5, why sometimes I believed in as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. There goes that bag of rumpled foreskin called AIG. Take a drink. Now, okay. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, the Professor, I think is where that's from. See, Caleb Sherstead is always making me dig deep for, like, literary references, and sometimes I get them right.
What was the quote? I'm sorry, I was looking for the...
The main quote is, why sometimes I've believed as many as 6 impossible things before breakfast. And I want to say that's the Professor from The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, but I might be very wrong about that.
6 impossible. Now all I can think of is Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Well, I mean, that's not that bad of a thing. It's a fun book.
That's not that bad of a thing. It's a delight. Yeah.
All right. Here we go. Oh,
yeah.
No, we got it.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Go.
We immediately get Creation 1, Evolution 0.
Maybe it was Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland? Oh, you know what?
Yes, that is Alice in Wonderland.
All right, fair enough.
Because that's Alice talking. She tries to believe 6 impossible things. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I was thinking of like the scene where someone says that it's impossible for there to be a whole kingdom behind a wardrobe, and then the professor says, like, what are they teaching in schools these days or something? Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I sometimes get them right. I don't usually get them right.
You got the right country.
That's true, but when you're talking about, like, 19th century English literature, it's predominantly British in terms of what's famous because Britain had very weak copyright protection. And so Americans just copied those books and published them like gangbusters here in the United States. because
Gotcha.
anyone could do it. So the 19th century canon of like classic literature is
Yeah.
heavily British, not because the Americans weren't writing good literature, but because it wasn't as widely available.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
With that. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and I'm already going to give them life on this planet.
Oh, thanks.
So now, miraculously, there's just life. So let's even start with the most basic question. What came first, the chicken or the egg? That's
Okay, so there's a new question, which means we have to have a new poll. So first we're going to end this poll. So if you accept evolution, are you a nihilist? Yes at 8%. No at 88. Oh, hold on. Just changed. Yes at 12%. No at 85%. And I do not accept evolution at 4%. So we're going to have a new poll when the button comes back, which is, it's annoying that it's not back yet. So we're going to hit play, but there is going to be a new poll for chicken and egg. But we're going to listen to what Raw Matt has to say about it.
It's been a question that's always been on people's mind.
Has it always been on people's minds? Okay, so which came first, the chicken or the egg, if I can spell things correctly? All right, so we're going to have chicken, egg, boom, new poll. All right, here we go.
Today, they know that it's the chicken that came first.
What?
Because an egg cannot be made without the particular protein that the chicken makes inside of itself.
What?
No.
I'm gonna need a whole big ol' citation.
Citation needed.
Which it's not. OBS, stop being weird. There. Oh, come on. There you go. Goodness, OBS is not agreeing with me today. Anyway, yeah, there. Look, lots of things lay eggs, and lots of things ancestral to chickens laid eggs. And, like, I don't know what protein he's talking about. Like, there might... I would not be surprised if there's a particular protein unique to chicken eggs. But, like... So?
Yeah, also, I can just, like, see the Pop Science article he pulled that from, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Which came first, chicken or the egg? Finally solved, right? Like, trying to get people's attention.
Yeah, as Ben says, all eggs are from chickens. Uncooked Matthew.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, it's a very weird claim. Let's see what else he's got for us.
So they know that the chicken had to come first. So what the evolutionists have done to negate this problem is that they've came up with...
This problem you just invented, Matt.
Yeah.
The rationalization and a rescuing device saying, well, something must have mixed and crossbred and therefore hybridized and made the first egg. And like fish produce eggs, for example.
Yeah, they do. I have no idea what's happening.
So maybe it was a hybrid dinosaur and fish that mutated and produced an egg that sprouted the first chicken.
No one thinks dinosaurs and fish could reproduce together. Oh my gosh.
And then make a chicken.
And make a chicken. What?
Take a drink, everybody.
Yeah. Okay, sorry. I'm going to put my phone down because I was looking for that article that I saw, and I didn't find it in less than 5 minutes. So
that's right. I mean, look, we're going to have an intermission at some point for refreshing drinks and whatnot. So
yeah.
But, like, no one thinks the chickens are the result of fish-dinosaur hybrids.
Right. Also, let's remember... Right, that currently things other than chickens lay eggs. Things other than birds lay eggs.
Right? Laying eggs is the default mode of reproduction.
Yeah.
For animals, basically.
Yeah.
It's like animals that don't lay eggs other than, like, most mammals.
Yeah.
Jellyfish and sponges. Tunicates.
Yeah.
Like, and it's not that they don't have eggs. They just don't lay them. They just kind of spew them into the water, called broadcast spawning. So, like, they have eggs. They just don't lay them.
There's still eggs. In mammals, there's still eggs. They're just internal, right? Like,
Creationist says, "Stop doctoring Raw Matt's videos. There's no way he's that dumb." No, I haven't even adjusted the frame rate on this. This is just the raw video that I ripped off the internet. This is amazing. Okay, let's see what else we get. Are we never gonna drink for Raw Matt saying a right thing, or are we just gonna have to get super generous with it?
Listen, we're just gonna have to see. We're not very far in.
It's true.
Come on, that's never been observed. That's not science.
That's true. I'll take a
If
drink.
it's not observable, testable, and repeatable, it's not science. It's
Yes, it is true that it is not science.
You're right. What you just said is nonsense.
Oh my goodness. Yes, Matt, your ridiculous straw man that no one should take seriously isn't science. Good job, buddy.
Good job.
Oh.
a hypothesis. At
No,
best,
it's
actually,
not
it's not a
hypothesis.
theory.
It's
a
still not.
hypothesis.
No one
Test.
thinks this.
I'm just taking a drink for it's a hypothesis. It's no one's hypothesis.
So it's a theory, and it's a
No,
really bad theory.
it's-
That's
Oh
why-
my god, a hypothesis and a theory are different things.
Oh my
Jeez.
I'm just taking another drink for fish, bird, or fish dinosaurs equal chickens is a theory. It's not at all a theory.
No, it's not even at all a theory. And one, like a hypothesis is in fact part of science, right? Like,
Yeah, if it were a hypothesis, it would be part of science, even if it were not true.
right.
Because false hypotheses are still part of science. It's one of the ways we actually weed out the wrong ideas from science, which is an important aspect of science.
So here's, I mean, I'm sure most people watching know what a hypothesis is, but just for an example from my own research, right? I study a very specific type of sea ice loss event that happens in the Arctic. My hypothesis, backed up by some data, is that this type of sea ice loss event is caused by strong winds that generate ocean waves that then break up the ice, right? That's my hypothesis.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm working on testing that. There is a competing hypothesis. The competing hypothesis is that it's warm air is transported from, where it's warmer and further south up to the poles, and then that's what causes this ice loss, right? So both of those are hypotheses. Both of those are real science, right? And it takes, both of those have things that back them up, right? But eventually, hopefully for my PhD dissertation, I'll be able to discern which one of those is true, or maybe it's a third thing. Or maybe it's a combination of both, right? That could be what's going on.
But if your pet hypothesis turns out to be wrong, that's okay.
That's fine. I'm not upset. Like, it'll be exciting that we found the answer. But all of this stuff, right? This is all science, right?
Mm-hmm.
The two competing hypotheses, the work that, like, you have to do a good amount of work to be able to come up with a reasonable hypothesis, right? And then you have to test that hypothesis.
Wait, you can't just pull it out of your rear that maybe chickens and fish had a baby together, dinosaurs and fish had a baby together and now popped a chicken?
Sure can't. I mean, listen, as much as I would like to say that, like, it's my hypothesis that Thor comes down and smashes the ice with his hammer when he gets mad at Loki, like, that's not science.
Have you been watching Thor to make sure he doesn't do that?
I haven't been watching Thor to make sure he doesn't do that.
Well, then,
Then how do I know? Oh, goodness, Dapper. You're making me question my life choices.
All right, here we go. Here's some more, Matt.
People believe in aliens nowadays because they look around and they go, well, how in the world did ancient man do these incredible things?
Oh,
Where
my
in the
goodness.
world? Why are humans so dumb?
Okay, to be fair, he's saying that ancient aliens is a dumb thing. He doesn't believe in it.
That's true.
He probably doesn't believe in it for silly reasons, but, like... Look, I'm not going to complain about anyone not believing in ancient aliens.
Fair. Yeah, no, turns out humans are real smart.
Yeah.
Humans were real smart 4,000 years ago.
Also, it's a little suspicious that the only thing in Europe that's ever really seen as ancient aliens is Stonehenge. Yeah, there's a reason for that. One of the guys who was instrumental in creating the ancient aliens hypothesis, even before Sitchin, was also the founder of the American National Socialist Party.
Oh.
Yeah. So, if you don't know what National Socialism is, go look it up, because we're not going to explain it right now on this channel.
Sure aren't.
Here we go.
Different than apes. How come we're so soft and delicate and an ape is strong?
Okay, so that's a good question. There's a few reasons. Genetically, there's actually a reason for that, and it's because apes have multiple copies of a particular gene that helps increase muscle mass, and humans have a pseudogene in one of those copies, so it's not active, so that gene ends up being less expressed because one of the copies just isn't working. But this is associated with other adaptations. So, for instance, having smaller muscles overall also results in much smaller jaw muscles, which results in extra capacity for the cranium to expand to get a larger brain case. So ultimately, humans to some extent traded strength for intelligence, and because they were able to do things like use weapons to multiply the force available to them, they actually were able to, in the long run, apply greater force to objects than apes could with raw muscle power, because humans could do things like use pointy sticks, sharp rocks, and levers.
And aren't we, to this day, the only animals that have mastered long-range hunting? Like ranged weapons?
Yeah, at least ranged weapons that aren't connected to the actual body. Like chameleons have a pretty long-range tongue, but humans are by far the best throwers. They're the only ones who really invented thrown or propelled weapons that aren't just attached to the body. Yep, and also they're also the most numerous ape species, so they're doing pretty well without that extra muscle mass. Just gonna say.
So what you're saying is all humans should be Dex build characters in Dungeons and Dragons.
Well, if you were going to go through like Dungeons and Dragons build and you're going to retool everything so that like baseline hominid is like that 10 10 10 10 all across.
Yeah.
Humans have like a 4 in strength. And like but like they've got like a natural like +4 to dexterity and like a +8 to intelligence.
Excellent.
And then everyone else just gets like the flat stat bar. Like maybe, I don't know, maybe orangutans get an extra +2 to dexterity and like gorillas get a +2 to strength or something. But yeah, like if baseline chimpanzee is going to be your 10s across the board, humans have a huge hit on that strength, but a pretty nice buff on dex and a huge buff on intelligence.
Nice.
So yeah, D&D stats. All right, here we go.
D&D stats.
Attack lions.
Oh, yep. Origami Swami did point out there are in fact some fish who do shoot water out of their mouths to hit flying insects. So yeah, there is that. And
that's cool.
That is. And they actually correct for the refraction of light through the water, which is pretty sweet.
Oh, that's
cool. And I forgot about that. So humans are not the only animals. They are the best at it, and they're definitely the only mammals. But yeah, there are some actinopterygian fish. I believe they live in the Amazon, but I might be wrong about that. There's a lot of cool stuff in the Amazon, by the way. That's where electric eels are from.
Ooh.
Yeah.
We'll run outside and attack a lion sometime. Tell me how far you get.
I'm sorry, Matt, do you think that gorillas and chimpanzees go attack lions? Because they don't.
They're going to be like, I'm going to get up in this tree, bro.
Right. All right, Tapioca Weasel is a new member. Welcome to the Sauropsid level. Thank you very much. The Sauropsid level, by the way, guys, is the $10 a month. That gives you access to the patron and member-only Discord server. Tapioca Weasel, send me a message or an email or something for that link. It gives you access to, sometimes I upload Blender files that are only for people of the Sauropsid level or up. And also, it gives you access to all of my videos early. Usually it's over a month early. The only exception is sometimes I try to get the Spec Evo videos out as soon as possible. Sometimes they don't go up for early access. But you do get access to all like the pre-production stuff. So like when I finish the art for it, I post that on my Patreon server. You also are the first ones to get the links to the article that has all the stuff that I'm going to read in the video. You get that in the Patreon server. So anyone wants to help out with that, feel free. Anyway. Oh, and Gup23 says, what about the fire-breathing dragons that definitely existed? Yeah, I forgot about those, too. Thanks. All right, here we go.
They'll make a puppet out of you in no time. We're so weak genetically compared to a primate.
What does that mean?
They run around with...
Oh, I'm just going to take a drink for weak genetically, which just doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, that's a weird...
How much can your genome press, bro?
Well, because, like, I think what he means is humans as a species are, you know, we've got a 4 in our strength stat. But the way he phrased that, to me, was saying, like, we're somehow genetically less fit than other
Yeah.
species, which doesn't make any sense, right?
Especially given how many humans there are.
Yeah, there's a lot of there are certainly certain environments in which, you know, a chimpanzee or a gorilla or a lion or a fish is much more fit to survive there, right? I wouldn't survive very long if I was thrown in the middle of the ocean, right?
We're gonna put you down in the Mariana Trench and see how you do.
Right. So I am certainly not gonna. I'm not the fittest creature for that environment. But humans are pretty. And humans also don't do great as individuals, right?
Well,
we're better together.
But that's part of the fitness boost, right? Is humans are amazing at cooperation. And by the way, Tapioca Weasel asks if they get access to live streams before they happen. Unfortunately, no. Those you still have to watch when everyone else does.
Yeah, turns out Dapper invented time travel, and it's available at certain tiers of his Patreon.
To tell everyone that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that a secret?
Yeah. My goodness.
Oh, my bad.
How do you think I got here after 150 million years? It's a secret. Goodness. All right.
HIV and AIDS in their blood, and it doesn't affect them one bit. They don't get a problem.
Hold on. We have to rewind a little bit because I missed the context for HIV. Okay.
Tell me how far you get. They'll make a puppet out of you in no time. We're so weak genetically compared to a primate. They run around with HIV and AIDS in their blood, and it doesn't affect them one bit.
Well, okay. I feel like if a non-human primate were running around with human immunodeficiency virus in their blood, that it probably wouldn't cause that much of a problem. Because it's the human version, Ramat. You're thinking of SIV, simian immunodeficiency virus, which does cause problems in non-human primates. Now, it's been co-evolving with them for longer than HIV has been with humans, so it does tend to cause fewer problems, because generally speaking, if you're a parasite, right, you don't want to be super fatal to your host. It's a bad call. So the optimum strategy for a long-term infection with SIV, say, for simians, is for SIV to suppress the immune system to the point that it gets to go around doing all sorts of virus stuff, but that it isn't like going to be particularly fatal to the host. At least not. It might be a little bit more dangerous for the host than not having it, but not going to be like the death sentence that, like, you know, getting HIV in like 1984 was, right? Like you weren't going to last long at that point.
And I'm going to be a little pedantic for a second, Dapper. You characterized HIV as like a parasite, right? Which it certainly is a virus and not a parasite. I understand the point you were making of like, if you as an organism need another organism to reproduce, you don't. It's not in your best interest to kill it. But anyway, sorry. I was pulled a full actually there on you.
You know, I think we might have to have a discussion sometime about what does and doesn't count as a parasite. Because I think that we might be overly restrictive with it, but I'm also not going to argue it right now.
Fair. And I'm not a biologist, so I'm certainly not qualified to really look at those classifications, but yeah,
and Creationist, as Creationist points out, which is, by the way, is Dr. Dan, go subscribe to Creationist's channel, points out, they get SIV, but it doesn't cause AIDS. Right. Because there's a trend that viruses tend to follow, right? When they first enter a new host population, they tend to be very virulent, and they also tend to have sort of a wide range of transmissibility, right? The reason for this is because when you have a new host and you have a whole lot of other hosts that are available for you to infect, what is most likely to get you ahead as a virus in terms of evolutionary fitness is reproducing as much as possible, as quickly as possible in your current host, because there's a very high chance that host is going to spread you anyway. But after like millions of years, like SIV, you get to a point where large numbers of hosts have significant amounts of immunity. So your best bet is to keep that host around as long as possible to maximize the chances of entering a new host who is vulnerable, because a lot of potential transmission events will fail. In fact, even in humans, HIV transmission rate isn't 100% per activity that might cause the transmission, right? You can, in fact, have unsafe sex with someone with HIV and not get it. I don't recommend it, but it's possible. It has happened. We know that it's a thing that occurs. Again, be safe, but it's not a 100% guarantee. And so in a case where a lot of organisms have this relatively high resistance, you have to stick around as long as possible. And yes, Creationist, I am going for the intra-host versus inter-host. The stage where you have a lot of potential new hosts, that competition where you just go as crazy as you can in each host is intra-host competition, because inside there's a whole lot of competing alternate genetic lineages within that host. And the one that does the most spreading is the one that's most likely to be spread to the new host. So, there you go.
So, to just speak to our friend on screen, Uncooked Matthew here. So, different species tend to be affected by different diseases. That's a thing. And you can have related diseases, such as HIV and SIV, or think like smallpox and cowpox, right? Those are related, but they're not the same thing, and so they affect their different species differently.
Right. And
the end.
I've never had smallpox, but I was jabbed with a needle contaminated with cowpox. And based on the picture as I've seen of people with smallpox, it was a much, much less horrible thing that I went through. Oh, and Command Cyborg is a member for 14 months, my goodness, at the tetrapod level, and says AIG is a bundle of malfunctioning joysticks. That works. I'll take a drink.
Ooh, I like that one.
All right, here we go.
They don't get a problem with it at all. They're almost immune to all infections.
That's not true at all.
So not true.
I'm just going to take
Now, they might be immune to most infections that humans get.
Right. Yeah, look, actually, just recently, there was new work published on methods that chimpanzees use to help treat wounds to prevent infections. And they'll even treat each other in some cases to promote healing. And yeah, it's
so cool.
Yeah. There's the reason that they do this. It's because they do get infections. You can... Look, we use other apes in labs for things like testing drugs against infections, because many of the same things that can infect humans, similar or identical things, can infect them. They're not immune to infection. Matt, the fact that you don't go around seeing a bunch of heavily infected chimpanzees, whereas you do humans, is because humans have a lot more technology to treat infections. The chimpanzees that get heavily infected by deadly pathogens just die.
Yeah.
And then you don't see them because they're dead.
Where is Raw Matthew going to go to see a sick chimpanzee? Right. Right. Like, if they're at the zoo, they put that they take that chimp to the vet, right? Like,
and if it's an infectious disease, they usually isolate it for a while so it doesn't infect the rest of the chimps. Because chimps are valuable animals at zoos. You don't just waste their lives if you can help it.
Yeah.
It's such a... My goodness. Well, I haven't seen it, so it must not exist. Okay, Matt, sure.
Yeah.
Humans die all the time from infection. We're
So do
volatile.
chimps.
We can't walk outside barefoot without risking an infection even from that.
Neither can chimps. Look, there are hookworms that infect chimpanzees too, which is the primary cause of infection of humans by walking barefoot. Also, I don't know for certain, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that chimps aren't immune to tetanus. I'm just pretty sure they're just not immune to that particular bacterium, because it's pretty hard to be immune to an entire bacterium that's an infectious pathogen. But here's the other thing. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
But like, humans use our intellect to do things like make shoes and clothing to help us adapt to a larger variety of environments.
Yep.
And if you get a hookworm, right, you might not feel great, but that's probably not going to kill you. If it's going to kill you, it's going to take a long time.
Yeah, it might lower your lifespan a bit, but unless you have a very heavy parasitic load, you're probably going to be okay for most of your life there.
Yeah.
And here's the other thing. Humans who habitually go unshod in environments similar to the one that humans evolved in, which is basically, like semi-arid grasslands, they're not just extra riddled with infection. They develop thick calluses and then they go about their lives just fine.
Yeah.
Like, granted, they don't have access to modern medical care, so they do tend to have a lower life expectancy, but not like drastically so. They're not just dropping dead at 20 every single time because of horrible foodborne infections.
Right.
Like, habitually unshod hunter-gatherer groups still exist. They're okay. Right? So,
yeah, they're just fine.
Yeah.
We have to put on clothing because we're weak and cold.
Yeah, in environments that aren't the ones that humans evolved in. There's a reason that why you look at, like, tropical people groups in, like, South America and Africa and parts of Asia, they tend to only wear things as, like, decoration. And they don't wear protective clothing because they don't need it. Now, you would, Matt, because you're a pasty-faced European who would get skin cancer in under 30 seconds without a good shirt on. But, like, the people native to these areas aren't that. They evolved there. They have darker skin. They tend not to wear a lot of clothing. That's one of the reasons why Kent Hovind calls National Geographic national pornographic, because they don't always censor breasts when they're talking about tropical populations. It's like, yes, that's a
My
thing.
go-to measure for is something like sexual or not is sort of, does it belong in a baby's mouth?
Okay, yeah, and breasts, the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. And if the answer to that question is yes, then it's not a sex organ, right? Like,
but then again, if the answer is no, that doesn't make it a sex organ.
Yes, that's true.
Because
but
curling irons don't belong in baby's mouth, but still not.
Okay, body parts.
Oh, okay. All right, body parts. Yeah, that works a lot better.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's the thing, is like, humans don't just have to wear clothes everywhere. There are places...
I'm wearing shoes and a sweater because it's like 40 degrees out.
Yeah.
Right? I also have my space heater on.
Right.
But if I was in, like, when I've been in tropical climates, right, I am wearing as little as possible and still meeting the, like, societal expectations of where I grew up, right? And
which is another thing. A lot of that is cultural and not necessity.
Yeah.
And I know that Raw Matt knows this because he appeared in this room topless to moderate a debate on modern day debate. So Raw Matt knows that this is a nonsense argument, at least where he is right now, because he's been in that exact same environment without that much clothes. Although he did have a bad Egyptian headdress on.
Oh, that's upsetting.
Yeah, and he spent most of the time flexing at the camera, not moderating.
Weird.
It was extremely bizarre. Anyway.
Okay.
Get sunburned. They don't get sunburned.
Neither do people who live in the tropics. Like, okay, they can, but it's extremely rare because they're adapted to that. You, Raw Matt, are from a population that adapted to, like, middle to northern Europe, and you're probably living in a place that's much farther south right now. You wouldn't be getting sunburn much if you actually lived in, like, the Alps or, like, Sweden or something.
There you go. Yeah, but, like, if you're from Nairobi and you move to England, like, you're never going to buy sunscreen.
Right? By the way, I'm taking a drink for this whole craziness.
Yeah, it turns out, we adapted to different environments.
Insane.
Insane. It's almost like
the thing is,
the melanin in your skin is related to the latitude your ancestors were from.
And the thing is, he also thinks this because he thinks that all humans came from a population of 8, which actually had an effective population size of 5, because, 4 of them were full brothers. So you only get Noah and his wife in terms of genetic diversity, and then the brothers' wives. So that's 4. Oh, so sorry, 6, I guess. So you get 4 for the wives, and then because Noah and his wife, you still can, at maximum, you get 6, not 8.
Yeah.
So you actually probably end up with like 5.7 or something, but like whatever. I'll give you 6, right? I mean, look, it's the science, friends, so we'll hand out a free order of magnitude. If you want to go to 60, that's okay.
Yeah,
but
that's
anyway,
fine. What's an order of magnitude between friends?
Well, when creationists are often wrong by like 4 to 6 orders of magnitude, that's true. What is an order of magnitude? We'll just give you one.
Yeah.
Have a free
That's
order
what
of
I love
magnitude.
in, like, astrophysics, where pi squared just becomes 10.
Yeah, why not? It's close enough.
Close enough.
Anyway, so but because Matt thinks that, he has to think that human, like, gross phenotypic differences, like skin color,
Yeah.
have to be a result of post-flood developments in the human genome.
Yeah.
So, like, he knows that the reason that people look different in different parts of the world has to be because of some kind of natural selection.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
he'll just pretend otherwise. Anyway. Oh, by the way, I'm taking a drink for this whole past discussion of craziness.
We are a weak, inferior species, considering we're supposed to be closest related to what's called a chimpanzee. That's our closest relative, right? So,
well, and the bonobos, genus Pan as a whole, but like, I'm not going to knock him for that. That's close enough. I'm also not going to drink for being right, because he should have said genus Pan, but whatever.
Matter of fact, here's another way that evolution is completely falsified really, really quickly.
Another way. We haven't had one
yet. Another way.
Let's find out what the next one is.
Karl Popper, a very famous...
Karl Popper?
This is doing
Karl Popper?
The most confusing thing to me that young Earth creationists do, which is they reference people, not ideas or science. And it took me a long time to really understand that that is because in their world, truth is disseminated down from individual people.
Yeah.
Right? I follow this person, and what they say is true, and everything they say must be true. Right? And so I really do think that most young Earth creationists, and I've run into it a lot with flat earthers too, but they really think that that is how other people get information, or how science works, right? That we go to, we appoint individuals, right?
Yeah.
Such as the people most often cited, right, are like Neil deGrasse Tyson. Like, you know, I've had to like, well, that's your guy. This is what he says. And I'm like, well, Neil deGrasse Tyson's not infallible.
Right. He's someone I broadly agree with about many things, but like, I'm not going to take responsibility for all of his statements about everything.
Right. Also, I've never once cited him in like my actual science work. You know what I mean?
No. Oh, you should be citing Neil deGrasse Tyson at every opportunity, Maddie.
Exactly.
I presume like, in meteorology is almost none.
Exactly. And even, you know, when I'm doing a citation, right, I'm doing research and I'm building off of what's already been done. So I'm going to reference all these other papers. I'm never citing the people, right? I'm citing the paper, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So if someone comes and says, "Oh, hey, this person whose paper you cited said this dumb thing," it's like, all right, well, it wasn't in the paper I cited, so I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it has no meaning. And so I really think that it's difficult to impossible for our friend here, and most young Earth creationists, especially like the professional apologists, you know, to wrap their heads around that I don't get my information about the world, right? I don't get my information about science or philosophy or ethics from individual people.
Yeah.
Right? I haven't decided that, oh, I follow this person, right? I absorb a lot of information from lots of different sources and distill down what of each of those pieces sort of makes the most sense, is the most true. You know, it kind of depends on which thing, right? If we're talking science, then like, you know, we're gonna cite lots of sources and bring all of that information together to tell a whole story. And that's also how I think about religion and ethics and philosophy, right?
Yeah.
Because people are fallible. All people are fallible. So I'm not going to just say, I'm just going to do and believe whatever this one person says.
Yeah. By the way, real quick,
I'm not going to limit myself like that.
For people who are watching, who are listening but not watching, I ended the poll, and which came first, the chicken or the egg? Came with egg 90%, chicken 9%, with 42 votes. So there you go.
Okay.
I also want to say that this is also why we get ad hominem attacks against Charles Darwin, as if anyone cared whether or not Charles Darwin was a jerk or something.
Right.
Like, no one, the scientific community does not accept evolution because Charles Darwin proposed it, and he's like our guru.
Right.
It's because the idea, many of the ideas, not even all of them, have stood the test of time and the tests of science, which have been multitudinous.
Yeah.
To pull out a
So-
nice vocabulary word.
A great vocabulary word. He is an so and when you teach science to, well, let me put it this way, like when I'm learning science at like my graduate level, right, even undergraduate level, but like individual scientists' names are almost never mentioned.
Yeah.
Right? You only mention them if they have like an equation named after them.
Right.
Right? Or if they like were really revolutionary in the field, right? So like names that we know, right? We tend to know Newton's name. We tend to know Darwin's name.
Right.
Because their discoveries were really big deals. But you know, you could learn about evolution, and you know, I've never read On the Origin of Species.
It's pretty
right?
good.
I'm sure it is. But like reading The Origin of Species at this point would have almost no that's like in the realm of history at this point,
Right,
not
yeah,
like not
it's-
even barely even science.
The only reason to read is history of science and not science.
Yeah.
If you want to learn evolutionary theory, it's not a good source.
Exactly. It was a good source when it was published because it was the first thing.
Right. But at this point, it's been superseded by a
lot of other books.
Yeah, it's hard to like overestimate to the degree to which it's been superseded. Like I don't think I've ever seen a paper cite The Origin of Species in any
you
kind of
wouldn't.
biology context. There's no reason to.
Right. I have like once in my life seen a paper from like 1912 cited.
Yeah.
That's like the earliest I've ever seen.
Well, in paleontology, because I read a lot of paleontology papers, you do get a lot of early citations because usually you need to cite the first time a fossil taxon was described, and if that was in like the 1880s, well, you cite the 1880 paper.
Okay, gotcha. And I think actually where I saw that like 1912 paper cited, I think it was a review paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's get some more. Actually, you know what? No, we're gonna go on a quick intermission, and then we're gonna get some more, Matt. And so I'm gonna refresh my drink. And guys, stay tuned because we're hopefully not gonna be gone for too long. And also, in case anyone is wondering, yes, the clock is working correctly. I still don't know why it wasn't the first time. Every time I went through that math, it should be working. But and we'll read the $5 super chat from Ventali 1998 real quick. First, there's a Godzilla emoji, so take a drink. Still looking for that Maddie sea ice theory to hit the science journals. Well, I'm sure it will eventually.
One of these days.
Even if only to say, sorry, that's wrong. I'm not predicting that. I'm just saying, even if that's what the outcome is, it'll still hit those journals.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to go on intermission, and I'll explain a little bit more about the clock after. All right, everybody. So we are back, and I'm going to real quickly explain a little bit more about the clock. So basically, every last bit of math that I did indicated that everything should be spinning the right the right speed, and it wasn't. So I'm going to chalk this up to me not knowing how Blender's driver system works. So instead, what I did was basically I just figured out, okay, after how many frames should each hand be at a full 360 revolution? I put a rotation of negative 360 at that point, put in a keyframe, made sure there was a keyframe for 0 rotation at frame 1, or actually at frame 0. Put a keyframe in there, made sure there was linear interpolation, and then had a, there's a function where you can extend a curve, and I put a linear function on that, so that way things like the second and the minute hand, well, especially the second hand, would just continue to go for as long as I ran the scene. So that is how I fixed that. There you go. Also, the reason I couldn't just adjust the frame rate on my previous video is because the lights are actually synced to the music, and if I were to do that, they would no longer be synced to the music. So I actually did have to re-render it. So I do appreciate the suggestion of just changing the frame rate on the video, but it would have ruined the sound sync, or it would have sped up the song. I didn't want to do either of those. But yeah, there you go. That's the quick story of why the clock was weird and how I fixed it by Dapper Dino and Blender.
Excellent.
Okay, here we go. Let's get some raw Matt in here.
Evolutionists said that if we don't match genetically primates more than other species, then common ancestry is falsified.
Well, common ancestry for humans and primates would be falsified. Fortunately, humans do more closely match other primates, especially chimpanzees, followed by gorillas. Well, by chimpanzees, I mean genus Pan, followed by genus Gorilla, followed by genus Pongo, which is the orangutans, followed by basically all of the hylobatids, which is the gibbons, followed by the rest of the old world monkeys, followed by the new world monkeys, followed by basically all the other non-monkey things. So, yeah, that's a prediction that was true and actually demonstrated. And also, raw math is true. If the current hypotheses and theories about human common descent with primates are true, then that is where we would expect to find the closest genetic commonality. So we'll take a drink for raw math getting something right.
Well, guess what? We
What?
match cats, house cats.
To some extent, which again, all boreoeutherians, so there should be some commonality there, because boreoeutheria, which includes cats and horses and cows and humans and dogs and pangolins, is a clade, and so we should be closer, humans should be closer to other boreoeutherians than to, say, Loraisotherians or Afrotheres like elephants and things like that. So yeah, that checks out.
We match rodents.
Well, that's actually even closer than cats. So rodents and primates are both in euarchontoglires, which means they're closer to each other than they are to carnivorans and pangolins, which is the next group in commonality there. Well, also ungulates. So those are the two main groups of boreoeutheria. There's like the euarchontoglires, and there's the ungulates. Well, the ferungulates. So it includes the carnivorans, the pangolins, and all of the parasitactyls and artiodactyls like horses and cows and whales. So yes, we should match pretty closely with rodents. That's why rodents and lagomorphs, which is the rabbits and their relatives, are often used as model organisms, because if it works in them, then there's a pretty good chance it's going to work in primates. And then when your testing with rodents is done, you move on to primates because they're even closer to humans. Then if that's going well, you can eventually move to human trials, because that's usually your target species for medical intervention. So like new drugs usually start with rodents because they're easy to breed and keep, and they're very closely related to primates. Then you move to actual primates. Then eventually to humans, which are usually your target group. So yeah, of course humans have close genetic similarity to rats.
And mice. We match pigs.
Hold on, Spinny. Oh, sorry, never mind.
And dogs.
Well, okay. So pigs and dogs, again, all boreoeutheria, but those are in the ferungulate side. So again, we should more closely match with pigs and dogs equally well, but closer than with, say, elephants or aardvarks or dugongs or things like that, right? Hey,
Yeah.
dugongs are cool, man.
Dugongs are very cool.
They're the cows of the sea, even though they're much more closely related to elephants than they are to cows. Actually, the closest living relatives of elephants are manatees and dugongs.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Or
I think he's about to say,
genetically-
though, that we match those more than we match chimpanzees, which just feels like a lie.
That's the lie. All right, here we go.
Okay.
Than we do primates.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm going to take a drink. That's just a straight up
But-
lie.
Yeah, that's just a lie. That's citation needed.
Yeah, we'll put up the citation because there's literally never been any study that would ever indicate that. Now, what you can find is that in a particular gene sequence, there might be a stronger similarity in this particular area. And often that's in places where you have high constraints on that particular part of the genome. So, for instance, this isn't with humans, but we'll give another example. So, both dolphins and bats, echolocating bats, use identical forms of the protein prestin, which is used in their echolocation. And the genome sequence is actually very, very similar because it has to be to produce the same exact protein. It's not identical because there's this thing called synonymous codons where two different codons can code for the same amino acid. So when you look at synonymous codons, they tend to have different ones, but still overall there's a very high similarity between the constrained parts of that gene in both groups.
Okay.
But
what is true is that overall, if you look at the whole genome, humans and chimps and bonobos are super close together, closer together than any other than humans are to any other animal.
Yeah, by a long shot.
By a long shot. However, if you're looking at a specific trait, maybe like the easiest thing I can think of would be like blue eyes, because like dogs have blue eyes a lot, and I don't think chimpanzees do.
So interestingly enough, it doesn't work well with eye color because blue eyes are actually as a result of a lack of pigmentation, which can happen for a wide variety of genetic reasons. So
I'm not a biologist.
Yeah, it's a little weird.
but some trait, obviously it's not echolocation with humans and rats.
There's probably some like metabolic protein that humans are closer to than pigs because they have a more similar diet to each other than they either does to chimpanzees, right? Chimpanzees eat almost entirely fruit and leaves with only a little bit of animal protein, whereas pigs and humans eat a lot of animal protein and not that much foliage, but they do both eat a fair bit of fruit. Okay, so probably there are some digestive enzymes that are more similar in pigs and humans as a result of selection, say.
Okay, that makes sense.
Well, great, but that's well explained by actual selection pressure. Whereas when you also do things like look at alignable sequences in, say, non-coding regions, or if you look at neutral variation in coding regions, humans still come out closer to genus Pan than they do to Suidae, the pigs.
Yeah.
So
our uncooked Matthew is either grossly misinformed or lying here.
Yeah. Or both.
Or both.
It's over. They lost. They even made that prediction. So they can't even take it back because it's already been predicted. They lost. So now they didn't go on for other facts. They've made multiple predictions. I know of 22 that's already been falsified.
I want that list.
What is that list, friend?
I guarantee every one of those things on that list has either not been falsified or isn't a prediction anyone made.
Yeah.
Those are the only two options here.
If they did that with the Bible and they proved one thing wrong, the whole thing's garbage.
I disagree. The Bible is composed of multiple different works that don't necessarily stand on each other, right? Like, you could say that, like, okay, all of Genesis, all of it is just complete nonsense. That doesn't make Chronicles wrong.
Right.
Like, those are separate things.
But something that's also important to remember, right? This is biblical literalists are bad at genre. So what does it mean for the Psalms to be true? Like, the Psalms are songs. These are lyrics that have been written down.
Yep.
Right? We understand that Psalms is poetry, right? So what does it mean for a psalm to be true or false?
Maddie, what
right?
it means
Like,
is if the rocks and trees aren't literally audibly crying out in praise of God, then there is no God and the whole Bible is complete nonsense. That's what it means.
Right. So now I will say this, even biblical literalists are okay at genre with psalms, because they'll say, well,
Right.
that's clearly a poem. We know that's a poem because it says so up front. And I was like, great, love that.
Ooh, fun fact, several psalms
Genesis
are acrostics
1
in Hebrew,
Oh,
where they go through the whole Hebrew alphabet. That's just fun.
Genesis 1 is also a poem. It's structured as a poem.
Kind
right?
of. It's not quite prose, it's a little in between. It's like poetic prose, and also it fits very well into the genre of mythohistory, where
Yes.
we're using a lot of symbolic language, we're giving a lot of stories that explain in a way that, like, explain the origin of things in a way that's supposed to help you understand how to relate to the world, but that you're not necessarily expected to take as the literal historical truth of things. Like, if you went to, say, some Hebrew person during the Babylonian exile, say towards the tail end, so we know that at this point, the Torah is basically in about the same condition that we find it now. And you say, okay, so do you actually think literally the reason snakes don't have legs is that they tricked Eve, or a snake tricked Eve into eating a fruit, which she then tricked Adam into eating, or convinced him to eat, or whatever? I honestly think a lot of them would be like, well, I don't really know. That's just, it's a fun story. And also it's about things like the fact that God takes disobedience seriously and that human nature has a severe problem with it, that God is here to show us both the problem as well as a way to mitigate this problem through the sacrificial system in the tabernacle, which later, or the temple, which had been destroyed, and things like that, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a much more likely interpretation. And no, I'm not going to get into the differences in the Torah between the Samaritan Israelites and the Jews. That's not for today.
That's not for today. If we can't talk about Star Trek, we're not going to talk about that today.
It is a fun topic, though.
Yeah.
All
right. But, anyway, so I don't even understand this. Like, if you can show that one thing in the Bible isn't true, it's like, well, come on, man. That's a loaded statement.
It's pretty easy to do, too, because the Bible
It's
says
also
that
very easy to do.
if your goats and cows mate in front of stripy sticks, they're going to have spotted and stripy children, which isn't true. We know that's not true. That's an experiment we've done many times. It doesn't work.
Doesn't work. So, there we
what
go.
you're
We
looking
did it.
at when you mate doesn't affect how your offspring come out.
Sure doesn't.
And similarly, we can do that with a lot of other holy texts, like the Hadith, which is the Islamic source of like sayings and biographical information about Muhammad, says that whoever emits their emission first during sex, that's the one that the child will more closely resemble. Not a thing. That's not how that works. Although, according to the story, the Jew who asked the question then immediately converted to Islam upon hearing that answer, because somehow he knew that was true. So the story doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't actually think it was a real thing, but whatever.
It very much sounds like it, and then everyone clapped.
Yeah, there's a whole lot of hadith that sound like that, where some non-Muslim, often a Jew or a Christian, comes and asks some question that there's no way they could know the answer to, and then Muhammad confidently gives a wrong answer, and then they convert. It's just how is this a real story that people are taking seriously? But then again, to be fair, those stories, I think, from a historical standpoint, are far less reliable than other sources that we have on Islam, so whatever. And there are actually Muslims who agree with me on that. There are some Quran-only Muslims who would take my side on that position. So, anyway, here we go.
They can't. But yet they've failed multiple predictions. But it's always okay because they just come up with another rescuing device. For example, they said the first woman is Mitochondrial Eve.
Nope. We're taking a drink. Okay.
Sure, not a thing we said.
No one has ever said... Okay, I guess I can say no one. No one I've ever heard of has said that Mitochondrial Eve is the first woman. Mitochondrial Eve had contemporary females, like peers, right? And they still have descendants. But what they don't have is direct line female descendants, right? So direct line female descendants. We'll use Maddie as an example because I'm going to go with Maddie is almost certainly an XX individual who inherited her mitochondria from her mother.
That is correct.
Okay, so if you trace that back to her mom's mom, and then that person's mom, and that person's mom, you get at this direct line of ancestry where the mitochondria are coming from, right? So the farther back you go, that you're getting to ancestors that have that same mitochondria. But Maddie, do you have a paternal grandmother? Or did you?
Sure do.
Okay, you do. Now, did she have a mom?
Sure did.
Do you have either of those women's mitochondria?
Do not.
No. But you're still their descendants. Or you're still their descendant. Sorry, plural, right? So that means that you have female ancestors who are not your mitochondrial ancestors. They're not your direct line female ancestors. So this is a chain that always goes from mother to daughter. And so what Mitochondrial Eve is, she is the most recent female human who has, for whom all humans are related to her through that direct female to female ancestry. So for instance, even if you're a male and you're not going to be passing on your mitochondria, you still come from a female line direct ancestry. So because your mom had a maternal grandmother who had a maternal, mother all along, right? Even though the line stops at males, it still continues backwards in time at that point.
Yeah.
So all that has to happen is that direct line ancestry was broken in the lines of all the other females that were contemporary of or to Mitochondrial Eve. And the fact that this happens is just a matter of inevitability over a long enough time, right? Because of genetic drift, basically.
And also, very important, Mitochondrial Eve had a mother who was human.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And here's the other thing. Who Mitochondrial Eve is could change. So, for instance, we can come up with a hypothetical scenario. Let's say that despite all the evidence that Elon Musk is just a weird scammer guy, he actually manages to establish a colony on Mars. But for some reason, the people who are on Mars are all more closely related to each other than just a random sampling of humans would make likely, right? So let's say they just all happen to be, we'll just pick, they're all Chinese.
Okay, I was gonna say, let's say we pick like an isolated village in England or China or Russia, right?
Sure.
Like one of the places 23andMe goes to find genetic markers.
Right. So
let's just take that whole village and move them to Mars.
Right. For no particularly good reason, Elon Musk is like, hey, rural village in China, you're all coming to Mars. And because, the Chinese Communist Party isn't super big on like freedom or something, and he's paying them a whole bunch of money, they're like, yeah, that's what's happening. So they all fly off to Mars. Then like Don't Look Up happens and Earth is just obliterated. Well, guess what? We have a new Mitochondrial Eve.
Sure do.
But she was living in that village at a time when other humans existed. Other female humans existed. And some of those female humans are probably actually the ancestors of some of the people in this village. So, yeah, in no way is Mitochondrial Eve the first woman, nor is she the first human. Like, none of this. This is all nonsense.
No.
So we're gonna hit play, though.
They placed her back in time at about 135,000 years ago. Okay, let's give them that. They said, well, she's the mother of all that's living.
Well, I mean, kind of. So she's everybody's many times great-grandma on the maternal line. By definition. That's like, to be Mitochondrial Eve, that's who you have to be. Yeah. So, you can say that kind of, because in every other line to every other contemporary woman with living descendants, there's a male that interrupts that direct female line. So she's also the only person... Oh, sorry.
Is that 135,000 years ago number correct?
I'm actually not sure, but it doesn't strike me as obviously incorrect.
Yeah, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it doesn't...
Well, it's again 2 orders of magnitude older than Matt thinks the world is. So I'm just going to go with it, because even if it's off by a whole order of magnitude, remember, we like to give, creationists a free order of magnitude here and there.
Yeah. Okay. So
it's probably not a million years ago. So yeah, we'll go with it. For $5, Mandali 1998 says, I'm scientifically wrong, but Mitochondria Eve is in reality the first eukaryote that used bacteria that became mitochondria. Nobel Award, please. I mean, for all of eukaryotic life, that might be a reasonable interpretation if you wanted to go with such a wide net, but usually Mitochondrial Eve is restricted to like a species. So there you go.
Okay. So where were the other women? They said, well, there must have been more, but they obviously didn't have kids or...
No, Matt! I'm taking a drink. They had kids, but all of those lines leading up to today have had male descendants which break the line of descent from purely mother to daughter. That's all it takes, right? So, like, let's say Maddie has a kid, and let's say Maddie has a bunch of kids. Maddie, you're gonna have 10 kids.
I got 10 kids.
10.
I got a whole. I need 11. I need a whole soccer team.
Nah, sorry. You're gonna have to like get a cousin or something in for a soccer team.
Somebody's else is gonna be the goalie. By the way, quick Google: Mitochondrial Eve lived between 100 and 200,000 years ago.
All right, so 150 is actually pretty reasonable because that's right smack in the middle.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, actually, you know what? In that case, we're gonna take a drink for Raw Matt getting something basically right. Because if you pick a number right in the middle of a range and you're not gonna report an error bar, I think that's the best way to do it. Is smack in the middle.
Okay, so I have 10 kids, and then a neighbor to play goalie. Gotcha.
Yeah.
10
now,
kids.
3 of them are going to be female.
Great.
So now they're the only option for passing on your mitochondria.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now let's say they go on to have 10 kids each, but again, for whatever reasons, they just don't have as many female children as male. If this persists long enough, chances are that your mitochondrial line will just go extinct. But you'll still have living descendants. Because remember, maybe the male line is also having 10 kids each, but who cares? That mitochondrial line isn't coming from you.
Yeah.
So all it takes is for a line to have ever so slightly fewer female descendants than male, just as a result of randomness, for its proportion to decrease in the population, and for another line to have a slightly greater proportion of female line ancestor or descendants the whole way through, for that line to spread through the population. And after enough time, you converge back to one person.
Yeah, I think maybe an even easier way to think about it is you got to like let it flip genders in your head for a second, right? But think about how like last names in Western culture are handed down, right? Like, I have, my dad is one of 4 kids, right? But he only has one brother, right? And between all of them, I just have a sister, right? So my dad didn't have any boys. And my uncle has 1 boy. So of the like 10 grandkids in my family, the family name is only passed down through one person.
Yeah, actually,
I think that's maybe a little tangible.
Yeah, that's also a similar case in my family. So despite the fact that I have 2 brothers and 1 sister, currently there's only 1 male grandchild of my father that bears his family name.
Yeah.
Which means, unless he has sons, then it's not going to go much farther than him.
Right.
Or unless some more males are born into the family from the brothers, because my sister took her husband's name, and her son has her husband's name. Yeah. So yeah, it works. It works. Which also, by the way, you can see that same convergence to a low number and could be eventually be 1 in countries like China and Korea, where they've had a very fixed number of last names for a very long time, and that number has been decreasing. You can see it historically, because we have a very long history of writing from Han Chinese. And if you look back at early periods in Chinese history, there were a lot more last names than there are now. But right now, there's only, like, I think 5 to 7 common last names in China. And the same thing is happening in the United States. If you look at families who have been in the United States for multiple generations, the number of last names that they have is decreasing. Now, the United States is weird because it gets a lot of immigration, so a lot of new last names get injected into it. But that was not historically true of, say, China or Korea. And it's still not really true of Korea. There's not a whole lot of immigration there. So, anyway, we'll continue on.
Okay. A natural disaster happened and it killed all of humanity, wiped them out.
No, that's a separate hypothesis, Matt. I'm going to take a drink because it keeps getting stupid.
This is different. You're talking about different things.
This is to explain the apparent relatively low genetic diversity in the human species compared to other related species. Now, there has been some pushback on this idea. Some people are saying maybe it was actually that Homo sapiens originated from a relatively small, isolated population that was cut off from, say, like Homo erectus ancestors or something like that. And that explains it because there was a small founder population.
Okay.
But in no way is this a mitochondrial Eve thing. In fact, actually, there was a paper that a lot of creationists misinterpreted as saying all species have recent origins. But what it actually said was basically many species around the world have reached, or their mitochondrial Eve was in around the same order of magnitude, which is to say around like the 100,000 year mark.
Okay.
Which that's
so to me that
true, but that doesn't mean that's how old they are.
Right. That's not how old they are. That also tells me that there's probably some sort of like mathematical relationship of when you're going to get down to mitochondrial Eve.
Yeah.
You know, because it's also, think about it, like you could have, if we were to go back in time to mitochondrial Eve's time and we were to look at the whole human population, right? And we had genetics, right? We could do genetic testing. We could, from that time period, recalculate who their mitochondrial Eve was.
Right. And we would come up with a new person.
With a new person, exactly.
Probably about 100 to 200,000 years before that.
Yeah. That's just, yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like there are statistical trends that occur across populations as a result of how populations work, and that
Right.
doesn't really lend any credence to young Earth creationism.
Sure doesn't.
All right, here we go, Matt.
All right.
Well, in their own fossil record, there's no evidence for this. So
Of
they
what?
can't even claim that happened. See,
What would fossil evidence of a population bottleneck be, Matt? What would it be?
Yeah.
Because it sounds to me like it would just be a relative lack of fossils for a little bit, but if a bottleneck is short enough, then it would be an undetectable signal in the fossil record, right? Like, we'll use some dinosaurs, right? Let's say at some point there was some horrible disaster. And look, we have a lot of volcanoes going off in, the Cretaceous. So let's say just by chance, one of them wiped out all but like 5,000 T-Rexes.
Okay.
That, if there's enough food for them and like they can bounce back in like a million years or so, that would be essentially undetectable. You wouldn't notice like a drop off in like T-Rex fossils.
Yeah.
So there could be bottlenecks in T-Rex populations and we just would never know.
Yeah.
So like, it's sort of like, look, when I was a kid once, and I was thinking about roadkill because we just passed some roadkill in the car, and I was like, how come the animals never go between the tires, right? Because like, things like squirrels or things like that, they should be able to pass safely between tires. But then I realized, okay, but let's say it happened, they just run off back into the woods. I wouldn't see that.
Right.
So
There'd
the
be no
only
evidence
ones
of
I
it.
see are the ones that did die. So if there's a short period of time in which, there just aren't that many of a species around, but then they bounce back, you're going to have a very, very good fossil record to recognize that, because you're going to have to look at a relative lack of fossils. But that doesn't look like much.
Yeah, that doesn't look like much. And it helped me out because I'm not used to thinking in paleontology type timescales. So like let's think about this T-Rex example. Could a fossil record reasonably tell like population changes over 1,000 years?
No. 100,000 is about as fine grained as you're going to get.
So, yeah, so that's
now that's a rule of thumb. There are going to be exceptions because, there's variations, but it's almost unheard of to get any precision below 100,000 years for anything in paleontology.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. Which is why I can say things like 30 million years are not that long ago in terms of paleontology. Because when your ruler tick is at that 100,000,
So think about how the human population has changed in the last, let's just go with 500 years.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Fossil records won't pick that up.
What it would look like
we're being studied by aliens in the future.
So what that would look like is basically you went from a population of like, few 100,000 people here and there to immediately a population of billions with no easy explanation as to how that happened.
Yeah.
So paleontologically, that would just be a single event. The human
basically
population
a step function.
Right, basically. Yeah. All right, here we go.
Okay.
They're reaching for things and they're grasping because they need it to be true, because they've already indoctrinated every kid in school with the only theory that they have, which is evolution.
So this is just evolution, a theory in crisis nonsense. Evolution isn't a theory in crisis. There is no
Really not.
There's no current worry that evolution is just going to be overturned anytime soon. It's a robust theory that's making new predictions that are currently turning out to be correct. It's continuing to make money for the petrol, fossil fuel
oil
industry.
and gas industry.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not a theory in crisis.
It's actively used in like medical technology.
Yeah. It's how we find new fossils. Because the thing is, you don't just go dig around in the dirt for fossils, right? Like, it takes money to go mount an expedition. And the way you get funding is you say, here's what I want to study, here's what we don't know, and then using things like evolutionary biology, I predict to find fossils that will likely answer these questions in this location, because it's the time and environment that is likely for this event or this group of organisms to have existed. So, I mean, if evolution weren't true, we wouldn't find fossils because no one would be funding them, because there'd be no reason to think that you're going to find those fossils.
Right.
Here we go.
So when they say, well, evolution, it's there's lots of theories. Well, why don't they teach kids then? Of course there's no other theory.
Oh, one quick thing I want to say before we get that is that 100,000 year mark that I was saying, that does get shorter when you get to really recent times. So within the last few million years, you can go down to like tens of thousands of years.
Okay.
But if you're going back to like more than the last few million years, like once you get to like 10 million years, that's expanding a whole lot. And that's just because in the last few million years, there's been a whole lot less of that sediment eroded. So there's a whole lot more of it that just exists.
Okay.
So it's sort of also like how, when you teach history, at first you teach like, a few hundred years at a time. But then by the time you get to like, the 20th century, you're teaching like a few months at a time. Like, here's what happened in early 1923. But then you like, let's cover the entire like third dynasty of Egypt in one lesson. It's like, but wasn't that like 250 years or something? It's like, but who cares? Okay. Anyway,
so there is no competing theory to evolution.
Not at all.
With Matthew, that's it's pretty just like there's no competing theory to like gravity,
Right.
And there's no competing theory,
The fact that loons on the internet have come up with density and buoyancy, which by the way depend on gravity, as a quote-unquote competition, is of no consequence to working scientists.
No, turns out anytime you've got buoyancy in an equation, the gravitational constant's in there. Right?
Yep, it's important. So similarly, the fact that some internet loons and some PhDs who basically just decided to abandon actually ever bothering to publish in peer-reviewed literature disagree with evolution is of no consequence. Look, I have young Earth creationist friends and family, and I know and love a lot of young Earth creationists, but here's the thing, man. When it comes to science, you're on the same footing as the flat Earth. There just is no possibility that the Earth is young. There is no competing theory for evolution. Nothing you've ever come up with has passed muster to counter either of those things. I'm sorry.
No.
And I think all of them know that that's my position on that. And I think some of them even acknowledge that it's basically the position of the consensus of science. But hey.
So they're like, where research is being done in like evolutionary biology is evolution true or not? It's like, what are the consequences of it in this specific application?
Right. How did this particular thing evolve? What mutations resulted in this particular thing? And the thing is, there's always going to be frontiers in any science. That doesn't mean that the basic parts of that science are just on shaky ground. So, like, for instance, when it comes to gravity, like we have really good like equations and understanding of gravity on many scales, but there are places where it's a little iffy. Like, how does gravity work at the quantum scale? We don't know. But that doesn't mean that you can just throw out general and special relativity because there's a special edge case where you're not sure.
Right. So, like, we know how gravity behaves around a black hole, or when like two neutron stars collide. We know how that works, right? And even like modeling that and making that more precise would be an active field of research, right? What weird things can happen in space to make gravity behave oddly, right? That's a fun question.
But
But- and then
it doesn't mean
also-
you can just ignore the heliocentric model of the solar system because you think gravity is BS.
Right. And then yeah, absolutely. Or if you look at the quantum scale, what is quantum gravity? You know, that's a great question, and we don't know. But that doesn't mean that buoyancy isn't gravity driven.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That fact does not help the flat Earth. Similarly, not knowing exactly how some particular organelle in like a eukaryotic cell evolved
Yeah.
isn't going to help you with denying universal common ancestry. It's just not. All right, here we go.
If you come up with panspermia, if you come up with the list of other theories that exist, they don't have any other answer that's plausible except for evolution being.
Well, panspermia doesn't run counter to evolution. It's just
Right.
one option for how life ended up on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure why he brought it up. But again, yeah, there
he doesn't
is no...
know that abiogenesis and panspermia are not evolution.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, he's kind of right in that there is no other option, but
Yeah.
he's not providing one either.
Right.
There. And okay, we'll give them multiple theories. Okay, let's say that panspermia started life on this planet. It
Okay.
doesn't help them in any way because one, beneficial mutations are now dead.
What? Why does
Why?
panspermia preclude beneficial... What's the
Beneficial
logical...
mutations.
I'm
Yeah.
taking a drink because there's no logical link between
That doesn't
those
make any
two. Yeah.
sense.
It's like if it's a Thursday, then my curtains are purple. Like that doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Look, what does the day of the week have to do with the color of my curtains? Which, by the way,
Yeah.
they're beige. In case anyone's wondering,
Mhm.
because I'm
You should have
bored.
purple curtains. That sounds more fun.
Tell you what, I'll put it on my wish list and you can buy them for me.
Okay.
Okay.
I actually want to now get you curtains that match your feather pattern.
Well, the thing is, my feather pattern varies between videos in which I have a feather pattern.
Dapper. How am I supposed to buy you curtains?
Look, I told you I'd put purple curtains on my wish list if you want.
Okay.
Okay, I'll do that later. Remind me. Anyway, but yeah, like panspermia, therefore beneficial mutations don't occur, is just
That's
complete nonsense.
yeah, that doesn't make any sense.
Because they've found that there are no beneficial mutations.
Nope, no one has
No?
ever found that. Take a drink.
No one's ever found that. That's not real.
At best, he might be misinterpreting Kimura's graph when he was working on neutral theory and where he intentionally set the number of beneficial mutations to 0 in his math because any positive number would result in them having runaway effects on the neutral mutations that he was looking at. And then
Gotcha.
creationists have then run away with his math saying, oh, see, Kimura proved that there were no beneficial mutations, and then showing his graph around where it's like, no, man,
Sure didn't.
in the paper, I read the paper. In the
Yeah.
paper, he says that this is an unrealistic assumption that he's doing just because he has to make the math work because he's not interested in those mutations for the purposes of his neutral theory.
Yeah. So like for example, like if you're studying the weather, right, and you're going to study a let's say a tornado, right? You want to write a computer model to be able to model a tornado. Something you're probably going to do is like, hey, we're going to put this tornado on completely flat ground because that's going to make our life so much easier, right? That doesn't mean that hills don't exist or that tornadoes can't form around hills, right?
Yes, it does. Tornadoes only ever occur on level ground. That's why they're so common in the plains of the United States.
But they're also so common in the southeast,
Actually, you know what?
where it's
When I lived in
terrain
Massachusetts,
is a much bigger factor there.
I lived in Massachusetts, which is very hilly, and there were plenty of tornadoes there. Not as many, but they existed.
They did. I lived in Massachusetts, and I remember being like a 19-year-old like intern at a company one summer, and there was a tornado 90 miles away. Everyone was panicking, right? And me, the 19-year-old intern, is like, they're like trying to send me home, and I'm like, no. One, it's very far away. Two, if it was close by, I'd be safer here. Three, y'all are panicking. It's like an EF1.
Yeah. I do remember actually one time in Massachusetts, though, there was a tornado warning where I was, like,
Oh, yeah.
at the location. So, myself and my sister-in-law and her sister, who were all I think I was like house sitting for my parents or something, and they came by to say hi or something. So we all went down to the basement, and they learned how to play Settlers of Catan while the tornado warning passed. So,
nice.
Yeah.
I do think like severe storm and tornado preparedness, like I was taught that in school from the time I was in kindergarten, right? We had a day on it every year. I think that should be nationwide. Now look, tailor it to your location, right? If you live in Michigan, also talk about some snow safety. But I definitely think that like severe weather safety should be much more prominently discussed.
Yeah, you should know what to do in a tornado if you're in a place that ever gets tornadoes. Also, Joe Smith says, could a slow, lazy creator give the impression of evolution? I mean, maybe. So that's actually kind of the idea of progressive creation, which was very popular in the 19th century, but has virtually no proponents now. Which was the idea that basically God just came up with like the new model of flora and fauna after a few 100,000 or million or whatever years. And so maybe. But the thing is that
Like,
how would you differentiate that from evolution with actual testable predictions? I don't know. I don't think you could.
yeah. So to me, that's kind of a little bit about that's sort of last Thursday-ism.
Right.
Could you imagine a supernatural being capable of doing that? Sure.
Yeah.
I think that actually brings up a lot of theological issues.
Yeah.
You know?
When your God is willing to basically lie to you, that's kind of concerning for your epistemology.
Also, does this mean that God intentionally creates all diseases?
Yeah.
Right? Like, to me, that's theologically, like, there's some concerns immediately there, to me. And like, I don't know, I think there's easier ways to reconcile it with your faith if you need to do that, you know?
All right, let's get a little bit more raw Matt in here. We're almost done. We've only gone through 6 minutes of this.
Proud of us.
Everything they thought was a beneficial mutation is nothing but an epigenetic regulation.
Okay, drink. So
okay,
he's
what's an epigenetic regulation?
Okay, so epigenetics is basically changes to how the genome is expressed that are not actual changes to the actual sequence of nucleotides, right? Okay. So one of the most common methods is that certain areas of a genome can be targets for methylation, which basically makes that area of the genome harder to read. So it's less likely for any genes there to be expressed. Now, I actually, because I've been doing some digging, he's getting this idea from the same place that Dan Biddle is, except that Dan Biddle bothers to give some citations. So we're going to have a citation needed here, Raw Matt. But the thing is that all the papers I've ever seen a creationist use as examples as to why beneficial or just mutations in general are actually epigenetic actually demonstrated the exact opposite. So one of the clearest examples was Dan Biddle, who I'm using as a proxy here because Raw Matt isn't giving me any citations. So I'm just going to use someone else who's using the same talking point. Yeah, argument.
Yeah.
So one of the papers he cited was about a Mexican cavefish. And this cavefish is one species that lives in several relatively dislocated caves. And all of them are eyeless. And they seem to have probably entered the cave at a time when the area was much wetter. And now the cave is their last little refuge, right? So scientists wondered, did they share a common eyeless ancestor and therefore have the same genetic cause of eyelessness? Or did they develop eyelessness separately? So they took some sample populations from two different caves and they bred them together. And they resulted in fish with fully functional eyes. And then they went through and looked at like the genetics of this, and they found out that yes, there are different reasons that one group is eyeless versus the other. And when you mate them together, there's a fully functional set of eye genes across both populations, but not within either, which is why hybrids can result in having fully functional eyes. But they also did this under different levels of light. Is this affected by how much light there is? No, it's not. If you breed these two groups of cavefish together in complete darkness, their offspring have fully functional eyes. If you breed a single group of these cavefish in bright light, they produce eyeless offspring. But then Dan Biddle went and completely reversed it and said that the determining factor was the light levels under which they were bred, proving it was epigenetic, even though that's the exact opposite of the conclusion of the paper. He did a similar thing with a study about forest mouse tail length, in which mice from heavily forested areas had longer tails, and mice from more grassy areas had shorter tails. And so they did a similar test where, like, is it the same genetic mechanism and whatnot? And it was a similar result. And again, Dan Biddle got it exactly backwards. And so those are the only examples I've seen of creationists actually giving sources as to how they get this conclusion. And every time, it's the exact opposite. The papers are saying literally that they're just either completely misunderstanding this in every way possible, or what I think is more likely, they're just lying about the papers.
Gotcha.
So, yeah. Here we go.
And that switch can be turned on and off based on where we move, what we eat, how we live.
Nope. Just
so
take it.
They're in big trouble, man. You know, the most recent one is the Milano beneficial mutation that helps man deal with cholesterol better. But that's just that's epigenetically mediated as well. It's altered due to a nutrient adaptive reason.
If that were the case, then it would be evident across populations, right? So this is an example of mutation. I don't remember exactly what it's called. Maybe someone in the chat knows. But basically, is this mutation that essentially makes you about 3 times less likely to have serious heart disease. Sounds pretty great. I mean, I would like that. But the thing is, it's currently geographically restricted, I believe, to Italy. Right? There's a part of Italy where this mutation exists. If it were epigenetic, then anyone eating that diet would end up with that trait. But that's not what happens. Because I promise you, live as long as you want in Italy, you won't gain that trait.
Yeah. I think I might be pulling something out of my butt here. But so for a long time, right, people have said that, like, omega-3 fatty acids are, like, really healthy and really good for you. And my understanding was that was based off of a study done on, like, indigenous populations of like the Arctic region, so like specifically like Native Americans in like Canada and Alaska. And
that's a fairly restrictive population.
Sure, but so their diet is really heavy in like fish, right? And there was something that they, like, health-wise, that like they never deal with, right? And it might be the cholesterol pinged this in my brain, but I haven't read this in a long time, so and so that was that, like, it's got to be that their diet is rich in these omega-3 fatty acids, and that's giving them this benefit. Well, that's the key. Like, it's giving them this benefit.
Right.
It doesn't give genetically distinct folks that benefit.
Exactly. Yeah. So, again, we're going to need a citation there, Uncooked Matthew, before we actually agree that this is an epigenetic, because I've literally seen nothing indicating that. Whereas I have seen papers describing what the actual mutation is, how the nucleotide sequence is different in this population than the consensus sequence, which, by the way, in case you guys don't know, the consensus sequence is just sort of like the most common sequence in humans for a particular part of the genome. It's the mode for that sequence. And then,
by the way, you also need a citation needed on what I just brought up, because I'm like, I was pulling that from the dark recesses of my brain.
It's a similar idea. It's an example of how this might be a thing. So even if you got it wrong, like, that idea is still valid as to how this kind of thing can be explained, like why the difference between genetics versus epigenetics can affect things like diet and how that works. Let's see. Where was I gonna go? Who knows? We'll just go with more raw mat.
Reasonings. And it's very clear when you look at the RNA-mediated mechanisms. The mutation is not overall beneficial because it did 4 things, and now it does 1. And it does this one really good because it needs to, or else you're going to die. That's called escape from adaptive conflict.
I have no idea what he's talking about, what mutation he's talking about.
Yeah, I don't either. I also, like, did you catch him, like, reading off his screen for a second?
You know what?
Like, no shade. Have notes.
Have notes, notes are great. But, I have no idea what we're talking about now. It seems like he just jumped to something else, but without explaining that transition.
Yeah.
So they've lost beneficial mutations now as well.
You can't lose beneficial mutations, Matt, unless you had them in the first place. So pick a lane, buddy. Right. I'm taking a drink.
Yeah.
And if they've lost beneficial mutations, that means that evolution cannot occur.
Even if that were the case, no.
Yeah, but also, like, if I lost a beneficial mutation, right? So like humans aren't as strong as other primates, right?
Generally
so
true.
There's we lost something, right, in our evolutionary history.
Your
perhaps.
evolutionary history. I'm a proud Ceratosaurus.
True. So we've lost something in our evolutionary history. So, but that's like, okay. Here's a better example. Like the width of hips in women, right? So like the wider your hips are in general, the easier childbirth is, right?
Yeah.
And so
you gotta fit that big old melon head through.
Benefit that big old melon head, right? And like if you look at, pre-modern medicine, like dying in childbirth was pretty common. So why didn't women evolve to have wider hips to make that like better, right? And that's because you can't have much wider hips than the current human average and still be very good at long distance running, which is
there's a trade-off between safety in childbirth and ability to just locomote.
Yeah.
For humans, for most species, no.
Right. But for humans, and for what we're good at, which is long distance running.
That and
walking,
throwing.
Endurance running. There we go.
Yeah, and endurance and throwing is basically the human superpower.
That's what we're super good at. And if we're going to have those traits, then you can't have, like, we've got as wide a hips as we can have, you know?
There's only so much you can do.
Yeah. And so so the idea of losing a beneficial mutation, well, like, the only thing I can think of that being is because it was a trade-off for something more important.
Right. Also, I would say, given the wide availability of alternate delivery methods like C-sections and whatnot, I would not be surprised if the human pelvis size started to vary in populations in the first world significantly more, both narrower, maybe not much wider, but I would not be surprised if female average hip size started to get smaller as easy access to C-sections increases in first world countries.
Maybe, like, it's not so much a selection pressure, right? Like, it's not, like, having narrow hips is no longer going to prevent you from having offspring.
Yep. Because if they're coming out through your abdomen instead of, through your hips, well, who cares how narrow your hips are?
Yeah.
In fact, I know people who've had cesarean sections because their hips were too narrow, which means presumably their children are also going to have similarly narrow hips. And they'll also, if they're female, will likely, if they reproduce, have to have C-sections, perpetuating a line of relatively narrow-hipped humans. Yeah. So, all right, we're gonna we're gonna get a little bit more raw mat in. I think this is our last section of raw mat before we close it up for the day.
Okay, sounds good.
So they said, well, when we look back and we see, well, why don't we see things all starting at the same point in time then? Why do we have these trees of life? Well, guess what? Trees of life don't exist even in the best books that they have. Evolution 101 and Tree Thinking are the most modern, up-to-date evolutionist books that there are. And they have multiple trees. None of them have roots.
Do you have any idea what he's talking about?
I think... Well, I think the root, if I'm deciphering this, is like, okay, so if we're thinking about like the tree of life model, right, of how, we start with like one organism and it all spreads out, right? Okay. I think he doesn't like that different branches, right? I think he doesn't like that all branches don't start at the same time.
Why would they?
I don't know. That's a great question.
That would be a violation of evolutionary theory.
Yeah, but I think maybe, again, I'm trying to interpret. Maybe he's trying to get at like why. I think he might be trying to say that it doesn't make sense that, say, like primates continued to evolve, whereas like horseshoe crabs stopped a long time ago.
Which, by the way, they didn't. They just evolved in terms of morphology more slowly than most groups.
Okay. or
But I'm not saying you're wrong, because he would say they didn't evolve.
yeah, sorry, I'm definitely exaggerating. Obviously,
Yeah.
everything alive is continuing to adapt, but like a horseshoe crab today looks a whole lot like a horseshoe crab did
500 million years ago.
Yeah. There's been little change in
Overall gross morphology, yeah.
Yeah, whereas primates now versus 500 million years ago,
There were
look
no
pretty
primates 500 million years ago.
there
Yeah.
we see. Look at that! I did it. I did a biology.
The ancestors of primates 500 million years ago looked like weird little worms with V-shaped muscles along their body and tentacles at the front.
Yep.
So very, very different. Yeah, look, you did a better job of parsing that nonsense than I did, because that, like, raw Matt's last statement imparted no ideas into my brain. It was just a word salad as far as I was concerned. So
Yeah.
I mean, well done for that, because my goodness.
Listen, I teach. It's my job to
Fair.
figure out from nonsense that comes from students' mouths what it is they think is going on.
All right. So guys, let's do some wrap up stuff. So Maddie, what do you have coming on your channel?
Okay, well, if you guys are fans of my channel, you may have noticed I've been on a hiatus for a while due to just some like personal and health and school stuff. So I am hoping in the next week or two to be able to get back to getting, live stream a week and at least one scripted video out a week. But between now and but no promises, honestly, because school is insane right now and I'm about to start my general exam.
Right.
But most importantly, Dapper, is tomorrow night
Yes.
at 6 p.m. Central, we play Dungeons and Dragons over on
Yes.
Cheshire Vic's channel.
Which, by the way, is
IDM.
4 Pacific, 5 Central, 7 Eastern. Do the math if you're anywhere else.
Yeah. I'm DMing. Dapper's playing a cool artificer. He made the map of the place you guys we're exploring.
I make maps sometimes.
Yeah, we're exploring a abandoned
Mind Flayer City.
empty Mind Flayer cave.
Yeah,
cave,
I was thinking of the overworld map, which I also did, but I forgot that,
you
yes,
also did that.
I also did the actual battle map we're on right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so, guys, if you like the guests that I have on my channel, a very high proportion of them can be found in this campaign. So, Cheshire Vic is a player. She's been on the channel many times. Maddie is the GM. She's been on the channel many times. Erica is playing. She's been on the channel many times. TD Lane has been on the channel a bunch of times. He's playing. Bent Hoven, my regular co-host for Kent with Bent, he's playing. The only person in this game who hasn't appeared multiple times on this channel is Luke, who is Erica's fiance, who's playing a Goliath fighter.
Yeah.
So, if you like any of my guests, most of my regular guests are in this game, so do check it out.
We have fun. Also, last week, Dapper stumped me because he made me think about the fluid dynamics through underground cave systems, which is a homework problem I've had to do before.
So basically, I wanted to make sure that we weren't going to run out of air or anything in the cave. So being a dwarf, I have a pretty epic beard. So I cut off one little beard hair and held it up at the cave entrance to see if there was airflow. Because if there's another outlet to the surface of the cave, then it's Venturi's principle, right?
Yep, Venturi principle.
Would almost certainly cause airflow in one direction or the other. So my hair should deflect to one side or the other. And so, I made Maddie think about the science.
Yep. I just stopped midstream and thought about it for a second, and then I realized, oh no, I'm on camera right now. Okay.
Look, this is what happens when gigantic nerds play Dungeons and Dragons. We have fun. We've mentioned the fact that cats have a problem, or can't synthesize their own taurine in terms of our Tabaxi characters' dietary needs. Like, it's ridiculous how nerdy this gets. So yeah, that's coming tomorrow. Thursday, I would love to say the next Speculative Evolution video is coming out, but I have no idea when I'll be able to reliably do audio, because I am in a room that currently is near people just ripping up sidewalks all day long, which means I cannot realistically record more than like a little bit of audio right when I wake up, and then throughout the rest of the day the house just gets too loud, and so like I don't know. I've started scripting instead. I am asking some of my patrons if they'd be willing to volunteer their voices for the Spec Evo video. Currently I have 2. I'm looking for at most 4 more, which would greatly reduce the amount of time that it would take to get this out. As it stands, I don't know. I'm not in charge of the sidewalk rip up.
Yeah, so everybody go complain to the municipal maintenance team.
See, I don't even know what that would be because I don't technically live inside an incorporated like municipal area. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't even know who that would be. So, yeah.
This could just be some dude.
I think there was a vote or something, but it was before I moved in, so I don't really know. Yeah, it's crazy. So
I choose to believe it's some dude.
Well, it could very well be. So let's see. On Thursday, what'll probably happen, it'll be the next episode of the current series on Dan Biddle, who is knocking down the 10 pillars of evolution. Also, for $5, Carrie Bronson says, when faced with fantasy, wannabe intelligent people ask, why is this impossible? Truly intelligent people ask, what is necessary for this? Good job. Thank you. I was actually waiting for the dick joke, and it never came, and that's okay. So yeah, that's what's coming up on this channel. Saturday, I don't know, but I was sent by Vishanti a PDF version of a book about supposed giants in North America. So we might start going through that, but also she does happen to have all of Kent Hovind's lecture slides, so we might take a look at those. It also might just be nothing. So there you go. Saturday, who knows? And that's as far ahead as I'm going to look because, again, Spec Evo stuff, scripting, who knows what's happening. But I want to say thank you very much to everyone who's here. Please, I hope I see you on Thursday. And yeah, I think that's it. Maddie, thank you very much. And we're going to get out of here.
Happy to be here.
All right. All right. Bye, everybody. I just want to take a minute to thank my channel members and patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above. Bob Knob, Bent Hovind, Denny5252, Ian Chen, John Ackerman, Chris Love, Landon Noel, Lingwei, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Veed, and Patrick Dennis. The people whose names you see on screen right now are a big part of keeping the lights on here at Casa Dino, and without them, this channel really wouldn't exist in the form that it does now. If you'd like to join this awesome team, there are links down in the description to join the channel or to join my Patreon. It starts at only $1 on Patreon or $1.99 here on YouTube. There's also a convenient join button right below this video if you want to join as a member on YouTube. Joining lets you see most of my videos early, in some cases more than a month early. Also, you can join an exclusive member and patron-only Discord server, which has a pretty direct line to me. And as you go up in tier, you get more and more benefits, including getting your name on this list. If a monthly subscription isn't really for you, but you still like to help out the channel, there's a merch store linked in the description. It has t-shirts, it has baby onesies, it has mugs, it has blankets, anything you want, Dapper Dino branded. And if none of that seems right for you, please just like and share my videos and subscribe to the channel. That helps immensely. Thank you very much.